Hello friends, drop your comments, perspective, and lessons learned in the comments section below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Zora Ellis knelt by the marble foyer, scrubbing at a stubborn coffee stain with steady, almost hypnotic care. Her uniform was neat, her hair tied back, and her eyes, dark pools of concentration, never left the floor. All around her, the hawthorn airs flitted past in designer heels and polished loafers like birds too proud to notice the earth below. William Gramps Hawthorne, the 82-year-old master of the house, watched from his leather wingback chair. He saw more than polished marble, he saw Zora's quiet diligence. He saw the gears turning behind her shy smile. But the others? They only saw a cleaner. Lizette Hawthorne, dripping in scarves and status, scoffed. "Can you believe she spends 20 minutes on one spot?" she hissed to her husband, designer label draped across her shoulders. "It's not even her floor." Claude and Marlin, Gramps' sons, leaned against the grand staircase's carved banister, arms crossed. They shared smirks that spoke of entitlement and inside jokes. "She'll never rise above her station," muttered Claude. Zora heard the whispers but ignored them. She'd grown used to being invisible. At 26, she'd learned the secret: silence keeps you safe. Sweat and backaches never mattered until today. Today, Gramps cleared his throat. "Zora," he called, loud enough that all chatter died. She looked up, heart stuttering. "Come here." She hesitated. The heirs exchanged curious glances. Zora rose, wiping her hands on her apron. Each step felt heavy, like walking across shards of glass. She stopped before him. Gramps smiled, his eyes twinkling. "I've noticed you," he said, voice soft but firm. "I've seen the way you work." A ripple ran through the assembled family. Whispers. Shock. Zora's cheeks burned, but she held her head high. She didn't speak. She didn't have to yet. Gramps leaned forward. "Join me in the library when you're off the clock. I think we have much to discuss." Zora blinked, unsure. The heir's jaws dropped. For the first time, someone in that house saw her. And it felt like the start of something big, something no one there would forget. Zora Ellis returned to the library later that afternoon, her heart still in her throat. She'd changed into plain clothes, jeans, and a soft sweater. She wondered if she should have worn something more presentable. No matter. She wasn't sure what to expect. William Gramps Hawthorne sat behind his massive oak desk, a chessboard open at his side and a stack of stock certificates fanned out like rare butterflies. He pointed to a dust jacket on one of the financial reports. "You're curious, aren't you?" Zora paused at the threshold. She nodded, eyes wide. Nobody had ever assumed she cared about numbers. Gramps pushed the reports toward her. "I saw you looking at these in the office." "You know what they mean?" She swallowed. I've taught myself some basics. I read whenever I can." He studied her face. "You're smarter than most of my grandkids." Word of that comment had already begun its slow creep through the house. Lizette's lips thinned. Claude's brow furrowed. Marlin snorted. "Why waste time on her?" he muttered to his wife. Lizette clicked her tongue. "She's a cleaner. Nothing more." But Gramps ignored them. He focused on Zora. "Come closer." He gestured to the board. "Let's see what you've got." Zora hesitated, then crossed to the table. She peered at the chessboard, the pieces arranged mid-game. She recognized the opening as a queen's gambit. She'd studied that 1-2 late nights with her second-hand chess book. Gramps raised an eyebrow. "You know that?" She nodded again. Her fingers hovered over the white knight. "Make your move," he said, leaning back with that old private equity titan's grin. As she touched the knight and slid it into position, the heirs outside held their breath. They saw the exchange as a breach of class. Zora saw it as a chance. When she finished, Gramps simply said, "Well done." No heir spoke up to challenge him. And for the first time, Zora felt the sting of their silent judgments and the thrill of rising above them. That evening, Zora lay awake in her small staff quarters, the chessboard image burned into her mind. She couldn't shake Gramps' invitation. By dawn, she'd made up her mind. She would accept. Down in the library at sunrise, the dawn light spilled through stained glass, painting rainbows on Gramps' worn carpet. He sat in his favorite armchair, waiting, a steaming cup of peppermint tea at his elbow. Zora entered quietly. "Good morning, sir," she whispered. Gramps waved off the formality. "Call me Will." He gestured to the opposing chair. "Sit." She lowered herself gingerly. The air smelled of old books and fresh mint. She felt a tingle, like stepping into someone's confidence. "We'll move to pawn. Your turn." As Zora studied the board, she spotted opportunities: pin the bishop, fork the queen. She smiled to herself. "You think pretty fast," Will observed. "But you also see patterns." Her gaze lifted. "I like patterns." He nodded toward the next table where a pile of financial ledgers waited. "Then let's talk about finance. You know what these numbers mean?" Zora glanced at the ledgers and then back. "I can learn." Will chuckled, a warm rumble. "You've learned plenty already." They fell into a rhythm: move, sip tea, swap insights. Outside, dawn turned to morning and then noon. Somewhere in the mansion, the airs whispered again, this time in alarm. Lizette stormed in. "What's going on?" she demanded. Will didn't look up. "This is a private lesson." Lizette's cheeks flamed. She stared at Zora. "You're so audacious." Zora met her gaze. "I'm just here to learn." Will grinned like a proud teacher. "And teach, it seems." As Lizette stormed off, Zora realized she'd broken through the mansion's invisible walls. With every pawn she captured on the board, she was capturing a piece of her future. And that future, she knew, would be anything but ordinary. Zora's fingers trembled over the night as she faced William Hawthorne across the chessboard. Morning light streamed through the tall windows, but all she could see was the board's black and white battlefield. She'd studied openings until her eyes blurred, and here she was, in the final moves of a complex endgame. "Your move," Will prompted, leaning forward in his armchair. Zora shifted the knight, trapping his queen in a tight net. She felt a thrill surge through her chest. "Checkmate," she whispered. Gramps stared at the board, then at her, his weathered face breaking into a slow grin. "I apologize, Zora," he said softly, raising his hands. "I underestimated you." Zora's cheeks heated. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "No apology needed, sir." "Call me Will," he reminded her. He stood and offered her a hand to help her up. "You earned that when fair and square." Everyone in the library held their breath. The Hawthorne airs hovered in the doorway. Lizette's painted lips parted in surprise, Claude's smug smirk gone slack, Marlon's arms folded but his eyes wide. None of them dared speak while Will acknowledged Zora's skill. Zora rose, her heart pounding. She hadn't meant to show off, but she'd wanted him to see her for once. To see past the cleaning uniform. Will poured them both a cup of peppermint tea. The sweet steam curled between them. "I hope you'll forgive my family's earlier dismissals," he said, eyes kind. "They're set in their ways." Zora accepted the tea, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. The heirs shuffled away, muttering among themselves. She heard Lizette hiss, "This is ridiculous." But Zora only smiled. She sipped the tea, letting its cool mint soothe her racing thoughts. In that moment, something shifted. The mansion's grand rooms suddenly felt smaller, as if walls moved to give her space. She realized that respect wasn't given, it was taken, move by move, moment by moment. And she'd just taken a big one. As Will and Zora settled into a quieter rhythm, tea sipped, pieces reset, she felt the first tendrils of belonging. Not full acceptance, but an opening. A crack in the door. And she was ready to slip through. The next morning, Zora found herself drawn back to the library before her shift. The aroma of peppermint lingered in the air. Will sat by the chessboard again, a fresh cup of tea at his side. "Morning, Zora," he greeted, patting the empty chair beside him. "I saved you some tea." Zora sat, smiling. "Thank you, Will." She cradled the delicate china cup, feeling its warmth seep into her palms. They settled into silence as though it were a comfortable old coat. Outside, the mansion stirred to life. Footsteps on marble, distant laughter, the clink of silver trays. Inside, there was only calm. Will broke the silence. Tell me about yourself. His tone was gentle, curious. Zora set the cup down and straightened. She thought of her small apartment, her second-hand books, the nights she'd spent poring over finance blogs. I grew up with my aunt, she began. She taught me that knowledge is a way out. Cleaning pays the bills, but learning felt like freedom. Will nodded, listening like every word mattered. And chess, she shrugged. Same thing. A board, pieces, rules, I control what I can. I see the patterns. I see opportunities. Will leaned back. You see more than that. He pointed to a stack of stock certificates on the table. I've marked a few companies I'd like you to analyze. Nothing fancy, just your take. Zora's eyes lit up. I'd love to. Over the next hour, they sipped tea and discussed market trends, dividend yields, even sustainable investing. Zora's voice grew more confident with each point she made. Will listened, asked questions, nodded along. He laughed at her dry humor and raised his cup in salute when she landed a good insight. Back in the mansion's corridors, the staff whispered about the new tutor and the heiress who'd been outmaneuvered. Zora walked past them with more poise than usual, her heart puffed up with pride. She still scrubbed floors and polished silver, but now she carried a secret power someone important believed in her mind. As she changed back into her uniform, she caught her reflection in a polished panel, a cleaner with ink-stained fingers and bright eyes. She smiled. The world beyond the marble halls felt a little closer today. News of Zora's morning sessions spread through the Hawthorne family like wildfire. In the grand dining room, the heirs exchanged tense glances over breakfast. Lizette tapped her fork against her china plate. He's losing his mind, she muttered to Claude. Claude snorted. He's always lost it. But this. He gestured towards the library doors. Teaching a cleaner? Ridiculous. Marlon, more diplomatic, cleared his throat. Dad's eccentric, sure. But we need to talk about succession. And Zora's name is starting to pop up. At that, Lizette's eyes narrowed. We can't have that. Gramps, you promised this house to your grandkids. In the library, Zora found Will staring at a blank board. He smiled. Morning. She sat down, trying not to let the family drama unsettle her. Good morning. Will sighed and waved a hand. I'm afraid the others aren't happy. Zora frowned. They think I'll get a piece of the inheritance? He nodded, I sad. They say you're unqualified, say you're just a maid. Zora's jaw tightened. She swallowed her hurt and squared her shoulders. Let them think what they want. Will studied her. You feel angry? She stared at the board. I feel ready. That afternoon, Will convened a family meeting in the drawing room. Lawyers, in-laws, and cousins gathered around a polished table. Will held up a teacup. I want to talk trust, he announced. Lizette's pout deepened. Trust? You mean the succession plan? Will nodded. Zora has shown exceptional talent. I want her to have a role. Gasps filled the room. Claude stood. This is outrageous. Marlon whispered harsh words to his wife, but Zora ignored them. She met Will's gaze, and his pride filled the space between them. As heated words flew, Zora realized the stakes had changed. She wasn't just fighting to be seen, she was fighting for a seat at the table. And she wouldn't back down. Zora Ellis moved through the grand ballroom with purpose, trays of hors d'oeuvres balanced expertly in her hands. Wintervale prep was in full swing, crystal chandeliers gleamed overhead and evergreen garlands draped the walls. The staff hustled. Silver polishers buffed candelabras, florists arranged poinsettias, and the kitchen churned out bite-sized treats. But all Zora focused on was making sure nothing spilled, no broken pieces, no smudges on the fine china. In the corner, Lizette Hawthorne inspected a tower of smoked salmon canapes. She stamped her designer-heeled foot. "These are too plain," she snapped at the caterer. "We need caviar. And gold leaf." The caterer swallowed and nodded. Zora passed by and caught his eye. He gave her a grateful glance that made her chest warm. Claude and Marlon argued nearby, drafting last-minute seating charts. "Move the Montgomerys closer to the stage," Claude insisted. "They're honored guests." Marlon shook his head. "More like business partners. And we need the richest donors in the front row." They didn't notice Zora placing champagne flutes on a silver tray. Zora paused at a long table piled with gift boxes wrapped in silver ribbon. She straightened one so its bow sat just so. A cousin brushed past and muttered, "Why is she touching everything?" No one answered. Zora kept going, ignoring the whisper of silk dresses and tailored suits that followed her every step. An heir's voice called out loud enough for all the staff to hear, "Gramps, are you sure she can handle the pressure tonight?" Zora's fingers stilled on the tray. She glanced up to see Will Hawthorne by the grand piano watching her calmly. He raised an eyebrow. "She's doing fine," he said, voice carrying across the room. "Better than most." The chatter died down. Staff straightened their backs, taking hope from Will's words. Even the cousins looked sheepish. Zora set down her tray, took a breath, and felt a spark of pride. She'd been invisible for so long it felt good to exist in plain sight and be trusted. By dusk, the room transformed into a winter wonderland. Ice-white drapes hung like snow and crystal snowflakes dangled from the ceiling. The staff gathered for a final pep talk. Zora looked around at their tired but determined faces. They weren't just servants tonight, they were guardians of spectacle, and she would lead them through it. The moment guests began arriving, Zora felt her pulse quicken. Limousines rolled up the circular drive, headlights illuminating the Hawthorne facade. She watched through the open doors as well-dressed men and women stepped onto red runners, greeted by valet hosts and flute-wielding flutists. It was a scene of old money glamour. Then came the Montgomerys' sleek black SUV. Naomi Montgomery stepped out first, tall, regal, her eyes sharp with both grief and dignity. She wore a deep green gown that shimmered under the chandeliers. Charles Montgomery followed, his face kind but etched with years of searching for a daughter he thought he'd lost forever. Zora's breath caught. Inside, a hush fell over the assembled Hawthorne family. Claude and Marlon straightened their ties. Lizette swallowed hard. Will walked forward, arms open. "Naomi, Charles, it's been too long." He escorted them into the ballroom. Zora watched as Naomi's gaze swept the room, and for a moment it locked on her. The staff backed away respectfully, giving space for the high-profile arrival. Zora slipped behind a pillar, clutching her tray. She spotted Dr. Reed, the genomics founder, adjusting his collar. His presence meant one thing: DNA tests were on standby. The whisper reached her, the Montgomerys might finally find closure tonight. Naomi paused by the table of welcome drinks. Her hand hesitated over a glass of pear-infused champagne. Charles placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You look radiant," he said quietly, not glancing at the trays or the uniforms. Zora realized they were seeing more than just surface perfection. They were seeking something deeper, something missing. Will cleared his throat and tapped a champagne flute. "Welcome, everyone, to our Winter Veil Gala." The cousins muttered forced applause. Zora watched Naomi's lips curve in a polite smile. Then Naomi's eyes drifted toward the staff entrance, toward the bustle of servers in crisp uniforms. Zora shrank back, heart pounding. She felt the gaze like an electric pulse. As the Montgomerys joined the guests, the room's energy shifted. An unspoken tension hummed beneath the music. Zora sensed that tonight would change everything, not just for the heirs, but for her own hidden story waiting to surface. Zora balanced a tray of smoked trout blinis, weaving between clusters of guests. The soft strains of a string quartet filled the air, blending with polite chatter about philanthropy and fashion. She smiled, offering the canapes. No one took them. They were too distracted, eyes darting around as if searching for something unseen. At the far end, Naomi Montgomery stood near a grand pillar, her back to Zora. Zora approached, heart-thudding. She held out the tray. Naomi barely glanced at it. Then her gaze dropped and froze. Zora followed her eyes to a small star-shaped scar on her wrist peeking out from beneath her sleeve. Time slowed. Zora's mind raced back to childhood, a moment of searing heat, a fall from a playhouse loft, and the silver-white scar that had been her only mark of survival. Naomi stared at her wrist, wide-eyed. Zora felt heat flood her cheeks. Her tray wobbled. One blinie slipped and fell to the carpet. "Oh," she gasped, bending to pick it up. Naomi stepped forward, voice trembling. "That scar." Guests turned to watch. Lizette gasped. Claude muttered under his breath. Marlon looked skeptical. Will's chair scraped back as he strode over. Zora froze, cheeks burning. Naomi reached out, voice shaking. "May I see your other hand?" Zora held out her left wrist. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. The guests parted, an aisle forming. Zora felt every pair of eyes on her. Judgment, curiosity, wonder. Her world tilted. Will placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Zora." Zora swallowed. The staff behind her watched, jaws dropped. She realized she wasn't just a server. She was about to step into a family's reckoning and into her own past. Guests fell silent as Naomi's voice trembled. "That scar, it's hers." A waiter stalled mid-pour, martini glass suspended in midair. Tom seemed to freeze. Zora's heart pounded so loud she thought it might burst. She clenched her tray, every canopy rattling. Lizette stepped forward, voice cold. "What are you implying?" Her tone was clipped, full of scorn. Claude and Marlon flanked her like bodyguards, arms crossed, eyes narrowing. The string quartet stopped playing. The only sound was the distant hum of traffic outside. Charles Montgomery moved swiftly, producing a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. "Before we jump to conclusions," he said, voice steady but urgent, "there's something else." He opened the box to reveal a tarnished signet ring, once melted down and thought lost forever. The M emblem is still faintly visible in its curves. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Z." Her temple. Naomi held out a trembling hand. "May I?" She gently took Zora's hand and lifted it to eye level. The signet ring glinted under the chandelier lights. Zora stared at it, the memories flooding back. Laughter in sunlit gardens, stories by candlelight. The day she'd been taken from the only family she'd ever known. Behind them, Will stepped forward. "Everyone, please," he said, voice commanding yet gentle. "Let's not turn this into spectacle." The cousins wilted under his gaze. The crowd parted, and the staff exchanged astonished glances. Zora Ellis, the maid, was more than a mystery. She was the missing heir. Naomi's lips quivered. She placed the ring on Zora's finger. "Welcome home, Amaya." The name echoed in Zora's mind like a distant song. She felt tears sting her eyes. She searched Naomi's face and saw hope, relief, pain, all at once. Zora set the tray on a nearby table, all thoughts of canapes forgotten. The gala's glittering surface had cracked, revealing a truth no one could ignore. And in that hush, Zora Ellis ceased to exist. From now on, she would answer to Amaya Montgomery, daughter of the dynasty. The hush lingered as guests processed what they'd just witnessed. Zora Amaya stood at the room's center, ring on her finger, heart racing. Naomi embraced her, and Charles's hand trembled against his daughter's back. Will hovered nearby, pride and astonishment written in his eyes. In one swift moment, everything had changed. The Hawthorne cousins stared, mouths agape. Lizette's perfectly painted nails dug into her palm as she fumed. "This is impossible," she hissed under her breath. Claude's face was drained of color. Marlon looked ready to bolt. Staff members peeked around pillars, astonished. The chauffeur who'd driven the Montgomerys just minutes before blinked, unsure if he'd imagined it. Zora's fellow housekeepers gasped softly, sharing nervous smiles. For years, they'd been invisible. Tonight, their world was shifting under their feet. Dr. Reed stepped forward, quickly producing a small DNA sequencer. To be sure, he said briskly. He swabbed Zora's cheek and Naomi's, sliding samples into the machine. Guests watched the blinking lights on the device. The quartet resumed, playing a slow, uncertain waltz. Zora felt her legs tremble. She looked to Will, who nodded encouragingly. She took a shaky breath. I don't know what to say. Her voice wavered, laden with shock and relief. Naomi brushed Zora's hair back, her own eyes glistening. Take all the time you need, my sweet girl. She kissed Zora's forehead. Zora closed her eyes, letting the warmth of her mother's embrace wash over her. It felt like coming home. A hush fell again as the sequencer finished. Dr. Reed read the screen, 99.98% match. He cleared his throat. Amaya Montgomery. The name sounded strange on everyone's lips but resonated perfectly in Zora's heart. Gasps of amazement rippled. Will exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders. The cousins exchanged furious glances, but the room belonged to Amaya now. She fingered the signet ring, its weight grounding her. Surrounded by new family and old walls, she felt both small and invincible. The scar on her wrist throbbed, a reminder of pain, survival, and triumph. In that moment, Zora Ellis vanished completely. There was only Amaya, lost heir, rediscovered daughter, and woman ready to claim her destiny. That evening, the drawing room felt both grand and intimate. Velvet drapes muted the gala's glow, and flickering candles cast dancing shadows. Amaya sat beside Charles and Naomi, the signet ring still snug on her finger, as the family regrouped. Will stood nearby, chessboard and tea forgotten. Lawyers hovered at the door, papers in hand. Gramps had called an impromptu meeting. The Hawthorne cousins lingered by the window, watching the city lights. Tension hummed beneath polite conversation. Naomi cleared her throat. We've found our daughter, she told the gathered crowd. Now we must decide what comes next. Her gaze swept the room until it rested on Amaya. You lost 12 years of your life, but we'll make sure you never lose anything again. Amaya's voice was soft but steady. First, I want to understand everything I missed. She glanced at Will. I owe him thanks. He saw me before anyone else did. Will smiled, pride shining in his eyes. Charles handed Amaya a document, the Montgomery family tree and share registry. Your birthright, he said. All shares, all titles. It's yours. He paused, watching her reaction. Amaya's grip tightened on the paper. Emotions swirled, relief, grief, anger at years lost. She inhaled, voice clear, thank you. But my story isn't just about me. She turned to the staff standing at the back, chauffeurs, housekeepers, gardeners, all blinking in disbelief. I want you with me. A stunned silence followed. Lizette's lips parted in outrage. You can't be serious. Claude's chin jutted. Marlon folded his arms. Amaya held their gazes. I've built eco-diamond patents from nothing. I plan to launch a new venture, Montgomery Labs, in partnership with Hawthorne Trust. And I insist every staff member here become a shareholder. You'll have real equity, real voice. Murmurs rippled. The staff blinked, tears of joy welling. The cousins bristled, how dare a maid turned heir append their inheritance. Will step forward. She's right. Merit deserves reward. He placed a hand on Amaya's shoulder. As legal advisors scrambled, Amaya caught Naomi's proud smile and Will's approving nod. The old walls of privilege trembled, crack by crack. In that candlelit room, a new chapter began, not just for Amaya, but for everyone who'd ever been overlooked. Equity wasn't a dream, it was real. And it started tonight. Dr. Reed guided Amaya, still trembling, into the drawing room where pale damask walls met heavy velvet curtains. A long mahogany table stood at the center, and atop it sat a small DNA sequencer, a laptop, and 2 champagne flutes half full from the gala spill. The air smelled of spilled bubbles and faint pine from the winter veil decorations. Charles Montgomery cleared a space for them. "Let's be swift," he said, voice gentle but urgent. "We need answers." He offered Amaya a chair. She sat, ring-catching the candlelight. Naomi hovered at her side, her hand clenched around Amaya's. Dr. Reed donned gloves. "This won't hurt," he assured them, though his own hands shook slightly. A flash of spilled champagne on the floor reminded Amaya of the chaos outside. One of the staff had knocked over a flute in excitement. They had paused to stifle their gasps. Now all eyes were on her. He swabbed Amaya's cheek. She watched his steady movements, heart hammering. Then he did the same with Naomi's. Each cotton tip glowed under the soft light. Outside, the Hawthorne cousins leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, Lizette biting her lip, Claude shifting from foot to foot, Marlon drumming his fingers on his jacket. Dr. Reed loaded the samples into the sequencer and tapped the laptop. The machine whirred to life, lights blinking in a tidy row. Each blink felt like a drumbeat in Amaya's skull. Will stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone," he whispered. The family and staff clustered around. The chauffeurs, once invisible in their uniforms, now craned their necks to peek. Gardeners in wool coats pressed close. Housekeepers held each other's hands. Everyone held their breath. Moments later, the sequencer beeped twice. Dr. Reed's eyes widened. He adjusted his glasses and read the screen quietly. Match probability, 99.98%. He cleared his throat. "It's conclusive. She's your daughter." A wave of sound broke the hush, Naomi's cry, Charles's relieved laughter, even Amaya's own sobs. The Hawthorne cousins stepped back, stunned silent. The staff exchanged shocked, joyful looks. Amaya closed her eyes, letting tears fall. The spilled champagne on the floor seemed proof. Celebration and revelation could mix and stain everything in sight. When she opened her eyes, Amaya felt a weight lift from her chest. She met Naomi's gaze. "It's true," she said softly. Naomi nodded, tears trailing down her cheeks. Will offered her his hand. She took it. In that circle of light and spilled bubbles, 12 years of loss collapsed into this instant of truth. The drawing room's quiet burst into joyful clamor. Naomi pulled Amaya close, her embrace fierce. "My Amaya," she whispered over and over. Charles brushed tears from his eyes, voice thick, "My girl." Across the table, Dr. Reed packed up his sequencer, smiling in relief. Amaya's knees buckled. Will caught her, guiding her to a side sofa. "Sit," he said gently. "Take a moment." She sank into the velvet cushions, still dazed. The signet ring felt heavy, as if it carried every memory she'd lost. Naomi settled beside her, smoothing Amaya's hair. "Tell me how you're feeling," she urged. Amaya's voice trembled. I'm scared," she admitted. "I thought I was alone forever." Naomi pressed her hand. "You're not alone now." She gestured to the gathered staff, chauffeurs, gardeners, housekeepers, whose eyes shone with awe. Many had served both Hawthornes and Montgomerys for years. Now they witnessed history in the making. Charles approached with a leather-bound photo album. He opened it to pictures of a little girl with dark curls, sparkling eyes, Amaya. She stared at the images, heart-tugged by memories that weren't hers to hold yet. "You were 5, Charles said softly. You loved daisies and the slide in the garden." Amaya blinked back tears. "I remember," she whispered. A fragment echoed in her mind, laughter, a sunny afternoon, her mother's gentle voice. Naomi nodded. "It's coming back," she said. Will rose and poured them each a fresh glass of champagne. "To family," he toasted. Amaya glanced at her half-full flute, then drank, surprised by the sweetness and warmth that seemed to settle in her chest. Around them, congratulations mixed with sniffles. The staff stepped forward, offering hugs and claps on the back. Lizette hovered near the doorway, arms crossed, face drawn. She exchanged a tight smile with Claude and Marlon before slipping away. The old money world recoiled at this upheaval, but within the drawing room, only connection mattered. As laughter and tears mingled, Amaya realized she'd passed through a threshold. She was no longer Zora the cleaner, she was Amaya the daughter. And with that new name came new promises, love regained, justice on the horizon, and the chance to reshape two powerful legacies. The gala music drifted in from the ballroom, but inside the drawing room, a softer symphony played, laughter, tears, and whispered stories. Amaya sat between Naomi and Will, their arms around her. Charles offered photos, and staff members took turns hugging her. Even the mansion's austere walls seemed to lean in, eager to witness this reunion. A gardener named Sam stepped forward, eyes bright. "Miss Amaya," he said, voice quivering, "I polished that ring for you this morning, thinking it was just a keepsake." "I never knew," he trailed off, wiping his cheek. Amaya hugged him, feeling the roughness of his coat and the sincerity in his words. A housekeeper, Maria, dabbed her eyes. "I've seen so many broken hearts in this house," she whispered. "But yours, y'all fixed it." Her southern accent wrapped around the words like a lullaby. Amaya squeezed her hand, grateful for every gentle soul who looked past uniforms and titles. Charles stood beside Amaya's chair. He cleared his throat. "I'd like to propose something," he announced. He sounded like a man who'd spent years planning his next move, but this was different. His eyes were soft. "From this moment on, every Montgomery child lost and found, every heir and every servant, deserves respect and care." Naomi nodded, tears still glistening. "And I vow to honor that." She turned to Will. "Thank you for seeing her." Will shrugged, smiling. "She made it easy." He raised his glass. "To seeing, truly seeing each other." Glasses clinked. Amaya felt a swell of power and tenderness. The staff around her cheered. Even the cousins peeked in, curiosity flickering in their eyes. As the party resumed its festive roar outside, the drawing room became a sanctuary of truth. Amaya let herself laugh, easy, bright, free. Tears ran down her cheeks, but they were tears of joy, of relief, of hope. In that moment, she understood how deep injustice cut, and how sweet justice tasted. 12 years of silence and invisibility had led here. Now, she was home. Daughter, partner, and champion of shared prosperity. The strains of Winter Veil music rose, and Amaya stood, offering her hand to Naomi. Together, they stepped into the ballroom's glow, ready to face the world, united, unstoppable, and shining brighter than any diamond ever could. Amaya stood alone in the quiet hallway just off the ballroom, her heart still humming from the night's revelations. The soft glow of sconces reflected off her signet ring as she stared at her reflection in a tall mirror. She wore the Hawthorne staff uniform minutes ago, now she was draped in her own tailored jacket Naomi had fetched. Amaya traced the familiar lines of the M emblem on the ring and whispered, "I'm Amaya Montgomery." Her pulse thundered as memories swirled, fragments of nursery rhymes, flashes of sunlight on the gardens, the lullaby her mother sang. Each memory carried a sweetness and a sting. For 12 years, she'd lived as Zora Ellis, hidden behind a mop and apron. Now she had a name that carried weight, history, and expectations. She inhaled, steadying herself. Even the staff's hush through the hallway felt respectful, as if they recognized a queen walking past her own court. She turned a corner and nearly ran into Will Hawthorne. He held 2 cups of tea on a silver tray. "You need this," he said softly. He handed her a cup. The steam curled between them. Amaya accepted it, warming her fingers. "Thank you," she said. Her voice sounded strange, unfamiliar yet right. Will offered a small smile. "You okay?" Amaya nodded, letting the warmth soothe her. "I'm scared," she admitted, but ready. Will set the tray down on a nearby table. He studied her, pride soft in his eyes. "You belonged here long before tonight," he said. Amaya looked at him, gratitude filling her chest. She realized that claiming her identity meant more than wearing a ring. It meant stepping into power, voice, and purpose. She sipped the tea and felt her courage settle like armor around her heart. In Gramps' private study the next morning, the crackle of a fireplace mingled with the rustle of parchment. Will stood behind the massive mahogany desk, flanked by family lawyers. Amaya sat opposite, the signet ring gleaming in the firelight. He held a vellum scroll, the Hawthorne Trust document. This trust has always named my grandchildren as heirs. Will began, voice steady. He unrolled the document. But I'm revising it today. He tapped a line. Amaya leaned forward. The lawyers exchanged glances. The Hawthorne cousins lingered in the doorway. Curiosity and fury etched on their faces. Will cleared his throat. From this day forward, Amaya Montgomery is named co-trustee, with full voting rights. His gaze swept the room. Her insight, proven over chess and finance, deserves respect equal to any heirs. I trust her judgment. He snapped the scroll shut. A gasp echoed. Lizette's jaw dropped. Claude scowled. Marlin reddened. They stepped into the study. Anger coiled in their postures. Lizette's voice trembled. You can't do this. She's not family. Will's eyes softened, but his tone didn't waver. She is family. I've seen her loyalty, her mind, her compassion. That makes her worthy. He gestured to the scroll. If any of you wish to contest, the lawyers will hear you. Otherwise, welcome her as co-trustee. Amaya's chest tightened. The weight of the moment pressed down, her name inked into a centuries-old plan, her future rewritten. She pressed a hand to the ring and nodded. Thank you, Will. Will offered a respectful nod. The cousins seethed, but the lawyers stepped forward, gathering papers. In the flickering lamplight, the old rules shifted. Amaya felt the current of change swirl around her, guided by a grandfather who saw beyond bloodline toward merit and justice. By midday, word of Will's revision had spread through the estate like wildfire. In the grand drawing room, Amaya, Naomi, and Will convened with board advisors from both the Montgomery and Hawthorne trusts. Legal pads, laptops, and coffee cups cluttered the long table. The Hawthorne cousins stood against the walls, arms crossed, grumbling. Charles opened the meeting. With Amaya as co-trustee, we need to realign shareholdings. He clicked a remote and a chart of equity percentages appeared on the screen. The Hawthorne heirs saw their slices shrink as Amaya's share rose. Tension crackled. Lizette slammed her hand on the table. This is madness. She jabbed a finger at Amaya. You were a cleaner yesterday. Amaya met her glare calmly. I'm still me, she said softly, but I know what's fair. She turned to Charles. I propose we allocate 20% of Hawthorne Trust shares to the Montgomery Labs joint venture and 10% to an equity fund for staff shareholders. Murmurs rippled. The cousins sputtered. Claude swallowed. Marlin's face paled. Naomi reached for Amaya's hand. Go on, she urged. Amaya clicked the remote. A slide displayed her eco-diamond patent projected as a design blueprint and financial forecast. My sustainable diamond process can boost profits and reputation, she explained. We'll combine Hawthorne's capital, Montgomery's brand, and my patents. Profits split evenly plus staff dividends. Will leaned forward, nodding. She's right. It's sound and just. The lawyers whispered. Charles turned to the cousins. Speak now, or we'll move ahead. The cousins fell silent. They realized their objections would stall everything, and they no longer held veto power. As advisors began drafting new agreements, Amaya drew breath. She felt a rush of triumph and relief. The power shift was real, old money yielding to fresh vision, hierarchy bending to merit, entitlement giving way to justice. Each share reallocated was a promise kept that no one, not even a cleaner, would ever be invisible again. Amaya woke early the next morning, mind racing with ideas. She slipped into the study where Will Hawthorne was already reviewing market reports. He looked up, surprised. "You're early," he said. "I couldn't sleep," Amaya admitted, sliding a stack of papers onto the desk. "I sketched out the joint venture blueprint." She spread them out. Diagrams of the Eco-Diamond Lab, cost estimates, marketing plans, and staffing models. Will picked up a page. "You really thought this through." His tone held admiration. "Walk me through it." Amaya pointed. "First, we retrofit Hawthorne's vacant greenhouse building into a carbon-neutral lab. Then we bring in Montgomery design expertise." She tapped another sheet. "Staff shareholders run a council to decide on social impact projects. Profits funnel into scholarships and community programs." Will nodded, eyes bright. "It's ambitious." She smiled. "I want it to be. We have capital, brand, and innovation. Why settle for small gains?" Outside, the staff passed the study door in quiet awe. Word had spread that Amaya was drawing up big plans. Chauffeurs peeked, housekeepers paused, gardeners lingered. They exchanged hopeful glances. Will cleared his throat. "Let's present this today." He stood and fetched his coat. "Ready for the boardroom?" Amaya nodded, "See." Thorne and Montgomery trustees in tailored suits, on the other the newly invited staff representatives, Maria the housekeeper, Sam the gardener, and Andre the chauffeur. They wore their work uniforms but held their heads high. Will called the meeting to order. "Today we discuss Amaya's blueprint." He gestured to the projector. Amaya stepped forward and began her pitch. "As co-trustee, I propose setting aside 10% of Hawthorne Trust shares for staff equity," she said. "Each staff member, from chauffeur to gardener, receives a stake proportional to tenure and role. They'll become true stakeholders, not just employees." Maria blinked in disbelief. "Me? A shareholder?" Amaya nodded. "Yes. You'll get dividends and a vote on social projects." She clicked to a slide showing projected returns and social impact. "This aligns with our commitment to justice and inclusivity." A trustee frowned. "This dilutes our control." Sam spoke up, voice steady. "Or it strengthens our loyalty." "We're invested." Andre added, "If profits rise, we all win." Murmurs of agreement rippled. The cousins exchanged uneasy glances. Lizette whispered to Claude, "This is unorthodox." Amaya continued, "With staff on board, we build trust. We spark innovation from every level." She met their eyes one by one. "They've been invisible too long." Will rose. "I second the motion." He turned to the trustees. "Are we ready to vote?" Silence hung for a beat, then nods. The vote passed unanimously. Gasps and cheers rose in the room. Staff representatives clasped hands, tears of joy filling their eyes. Amaya exhaled, heartful. Justice had taken its first concrete form. Just as the applause died, the door burst open. Lizette, Claude, and Marlon stormed in, faces red. Lizette pointed at Amaya. "You can't just give away shares." Claude's voice thundered. "This is our birthright." Marlon's fists clenched. "You're wrecking everything we stand for." Trustees shifted uncomfortably. Staff representatives stood firm, chairs scraping the floor. Amaya rose, calm but firm. "I didn't take anything," she said. "I was offered an opportunity." Lizette sneered. "Opportunity? You're handing out power to servants." Maria's voice rang clear. "We're not servants. We're people." Will stepped between them. "Enough." His tone brooked no argument. The motion passed fairly. "That's that." Lizette's lip curled. "You'll regret this." She and the cousins turned on their heels and stalked out, slamming the door. Silence fell. The staff looked at Amaya, worried. She met their eyes, offering a reassuring smile. Will cleared his throat. "Well, that was immediate feedback." He swallowed, then grinned. "Shows how badly this change was needed." The boardroom erupted into laughter and relief. Advisors scurried to finalize documents. Amaya took Maria aside. "You did amazing." Maria hugged her. "I feel alive." As the meeting resumed, Amaya realized transformation always stirs a storm. But after the wind settles, new seeds can grow into forests. And today they'd weathered the tempest together. Early sunlight filtered through the high glass ceiling of the old Hawthorne greenhouse as Amaya led William Gramps Hawthorne and a small group of trustees and staff down a polished concrete walkway. Vines once trained for ornament now curled around stainless steel support beams, guiding the eye toward a gleaming new door labeled Montgomery Hawthorne Ecolab. Her heart fluttered with pride and a tiny flicker of nerves. Today she'd show them how her patent work came to life. She paused at the threshold and turned to Will. "Ready?" she asked, voice soft but clear. He nodded, eyes bright beneath his gray brows. Behind him, Maria the housekeeper adjusted her uniform, and Sam the gardener shifted in his boots. Both had stakes now, real ones, in this venture's success. Amaya took a deep breath and pushed the door open. Inside, warm air smelled faintly of ozone and sweet blossoms. Rows of stainless steel vats lined one wall, bubbling with colorless solutions, each tagged with a number and a chemical formula. Along the opposite wall, transparent tubes arched overhead, carrying water and recycled diamond slurry from one workstation to the next. In the center, a circular platform held 3 engineers in crisp lab coats, hard at work calibrating laser cutters tuned to Orbisec's eco-diamond specifications. Will stepped forward, leaning close to read a digital display on one vat. CO2 capture phase 1. He turned to Amaya. "You've really nailed this. No waste, no heavy mining. Just captured carbon and lab-grown at near-ambient conditions." His voice wavered with genuine awe. Amaya smiled, guiding them deeper. "We capture emissions from the factory's solar heaters, feed them into the solution, and then the lasers help crystallize the carbon into gem-quality structures. These eco-diamonds require 95% less energy than traditional methods." She tapped a touchscreen console. "Control systems open source for staff to inspect. Transparency matters." Maria stepped up, eyes wide. "This is our greenhouse? I used to water begonias here." She laughed, tears of joy in her voice. "Now I might work on cutting diamonds." Sam nodded, tracing a vine climbing a beam. "Innovation grows just like plants, give it sunlight and support." They moved on to a small quality control lab. Amaya handed Will a tray of rough, colorless stones. "Here, take one." He held it under a magnifier. "Brilliant clarity," he breathed. "I've never seen anything like it." Amaya watched his expression soften. "And every stone here helps fund staff dividends and community scholarships," she added. "We're proving profits and purpose can coexist." Will swallowed hard, pride and emotion colliding. He looked at her, the once invisible maid turned visionary heir, and realized she'd not only fulfilled her promise but surpassed every expectation. The eco-factory was no longer a dream, it was a shining testament to what justice, innovation, and shared prosperity could build one diamond at a time. Back in the sunlit atrium next door, trustees gathered for a short ceremony. Amaya stood at a podium beneath hanging ferns, clipboard in hand. The new Montgomery Hawthorne Scholarship Fund for STEM Excellence would officially launch today, funded directly by Eco-Diamond profits, and she wanted every staff member to witness it. Her chest tightened with the gravity of the moment. "I'm honored," she began, voice steady despite the butterflies. "This scholarship fund is dedicated to providing full tuition, mentorship, and internship opportunities for students from underserved communities, especially those from backgrounds like mine and many of yours." She let her gaze sweep across the audience, trustees in tailored suits, lab engineers in coats, chauffeurs in crisp uniforms, and housekeepers and gardeners standing side by side. "We'll award 10 scholarships this year, renewable for 4 years. Maria leaned toward Sam and whispered, 10 kids, that's a whole classroom. Sam pressed her shoulder. And next year, more. Amaya continued, applications open on January 1st. We've partnered with local schools and online platforms to ensure accessibility. Trustees, staff, engineers, all of you will serve as judges, mentors, and ambassadors. This isn't charity, it's empowerment. She smiled as a soft cheer rose. A trustee cleared his throat. Ms. Montgomery, this is truly remarkable. May I ask how you envision the selection process balancing academic merit and potential? Amaya nodded. We'll use a weighted rubric. 50% academic performance, 30% leadership and community service, and 20% personal statement. But any applicant with exceptional circumstances can appeal for a review board. Staff reps will sit on it. We'll step forward beaming. That's what I love about her vision, fairness and flexibility. Everyone deserves a shot. He raised his hand. Trustees, I move that we ratify the scholarship structure as presented. Heads nodded in agreement. The vote passed amid enthusiastic applause. As the group dispersed, Charles approached her with a file of youth profiles from partner schools. Here are our first candidates, he said. I can't wait to read their stories. Amaya tucked the file under her arm. Let's make space in their lives the way so many made space for me. She turned, spotting Maria and Sam chatting with scholarship coordinators, smiles lighting their faces. Look how it's already rippling, she whispered to Will. He put an arm around her shoulders. From a single patent to 1,000 young scientists, your impact is growing every day. Amaya nodded, feeling the weight and wonder of her journey. 12 years ago, she was lost and alone. Now she was planting seeds of opportunity that would bear fruit for generations. And just like that, hope took root in hearts she once thought unreachable. By midday's end, news of the maid-turned-magnate had exploded across every major outlet. Amaya walked through the mansion's front hall, greeted by the buzz of cameras and flashes from reporters jockeying for position. On her phone, notifications pinged relentlessly. Headlines from Forbes, Wired, Bloomberg, even lifestyle blogs from how a housemaid conquered high finance to eco-diamond queen rewrites the rules. She paused by the grand staircase, watching a cluster of journalists hanging on Charles's every word. Yes, the DNA test confirmed the heir's identity, he recounted, voice measured. But her vision for shared equity, sustainable tech, and educational scholarships is what truly sets her apart. Reporters scribbled notes furiously, cameras rolling. Amaya drew a deep breath and stepped forward, smoothing her jacket. Naomi by her side, she approached the microphone. Flashbulbs popped as she raised a hand. Hello, she began, voice amplified through the hall's acoustic design. I'm Amaya Montgomery. 12 years ago, I lost my family and my name. Today, I stand before you as a daughter, a co-trustee, and someone determined to prove that merit and compassion belong together. A reporter yelled, "What's next for the Eco-Diamond venture?" Another shouted, "How can other companies follow your model?" Amaya fielded each question with calm clarity, outlining expansion plans for new labs, encouraging competitors to adopt transparent profit sharing, and inviting volunteers to help with scholarship interviews. Downstairs, Maria and Sam peered from behind a pillar, disbelief on their faces as they watched Amaya move from mic to mic. That was her, Maria whispered. Sam nodded. She's unstoppable. After 15 minutes of rapid-fire questions, Amaya concluded, "Thank you. Please stay tuned for our official press release." And to everyone listening, true change happens when we share opportunity. Let's build a future that leaves no one invisible. With that, she stepped back, camera crews jostling to capture every angle. That night, social media lit up. #MadeToMagnate trended worldwide. Influencers debated meritocracy versus inheritance. Online forums buzzed with admiration, skepticism, and debate, just as Amaya wanted. Her story had struck a chord, injustice confronted by innovation, exclusion shattered by shared wealth. As the last reporter packed up, Amaya slipped away to the quiet of her new office. Notifications still streamed in. Interview requests, speaking invitations, messages from former colleagues cheering her on. She sank into her chair, the mansion's grand windows framing city lights like distant promises. She tapped out a quick tweet, "Thanks for the love, everyone. We're just getting started. Stay tuned, share your thoughts, and remember, together we rise." Hashtag made to magnate. Then she leaned back, a small smile playing on her lips. The story was far from over and the world was watching. The morning after the gala, Amaya found herself in the grand drawing room again, this time for a more personal meeting. The Hawthorne cousins filed in, faces still pinched with pride but softened by the whirlwind of recent events. Maria the housekeeper and Sam the gardener hovered near the doorway, invited as witnesses to this historic moment. Will Hawthorne stood at the head of the room. "Family," he began, voice gentle, "it's time we heal old wounds." He turned to Lizette. "Your apology means more than words." Lizette's shoulders trembled. She swallowed and met Amaya's gaze. I'm sorry, Amaya. I judged you unfairly." Her voice cracked. Claude and Marlon exchanged guilty glances, then stepped forward in turn. "Me too," Claude muttered. Marlon nodded, voice low, "I'm sorry." Amaya felt a mix of relief and lingering hurt. She remembered the whispered insults and locked doors. Yet now here they were, offering fragile olive branches. She took a deep breath and let forgiveness flow. "Thank you," she said softly. "I know change isn't easy, but we're all family now." A pause hung in the air, then Maria stepped forward, offering Lizette a small bouquet of winter blooms. From the staff, she said with a shy smile, "We'd like to thank you for apologizing." Lizette accepted the flowers, tears in her eyes. The staff clapped quietly, their cheers sweet and genuine. Outside the drawing room windows, gardeners laid fresh winter ivy. Chauffeurs peeked through glass doors, thumbs up. The mansion's atmosphere felt lighter, like a heavy curtain had lifted. Will rose. "Let's toast to new beginnings." He raised his teacup of peppermint tea. Amaya did the same, then all family and staff followed suit. The clink of china echoed warmth and unity. For a moment, past and present merged. The cousins' hard edges softened, and the staff's hesitant smiles grew confident. Amaya realized that reconciliation wasn't about erasing pain, but about walking forward together. And in that simple, shared toast, everyone grasped the promise of a more just, compassionate future. A week later, Amaya and Will sat side by side in the estate's refurbished library, now painted a soft ivory and warmed by a crackling fireplace. A camera crew from the scholarship program set up lights and microphones. Today, they'd live stream a special chess lesson and pep talk for their first cohort of STEM scholars. Will arranged the chessboard. "Ready?" he asked, handing Amaya a pawn. She grinned. "Let's do this." As the red live light blinked on, Will greeted the students. "Hello, young innovators. Welcome to your first strategy session." Amaya chimed in, voice confident and warm. "We're thrilled to have you here." Behind them, shelves of books and trophies glowed in the soft light. They began with the basics, pawn structure, controlling the center. Will demonstrated a classic opening. Amaya explained its financial parallel. "Think of pawns as investments," she said. "You deploy them carefully to build a strong position." Will nodded, adding, "And just like in business, timing matters." Across the screen, green squares lit up with student questions. "What if my opponent sacrifices a piece?" one voice asked. Amaya smiled. "Sometimes risk pays off," she replied. "But you need a backup plan, just like in life." She moved her knight, capturing a bishop. "See? Calculated risk." Between moves, they shared life lessons. Will spoke of patience. "I waited decades to see merit rise above pedigree." Amaya shared her journey. "I spent years cleaning floors, dreaming of numbers and patterns. Now I stand here because I never gave up." The students typed hearts and "thank you" in chat. Maria and Sam watched at Will's side screen, beaming. For them, this broadcast was more than chess, it was proof that opportunity could stream anywhere. As the final checkmate approached, Will leaned in. "Remember," he said, "strategy in chess and in life starts with kindness and vision." Amaya nodded, pressing the last piece. "Checkmate." They waved to the camera. "Keep practicing," Will urged. "And subscribe to our channel," Amaya added with a playful wink. "Share this with friends and keep learning." The live stream ended and the room erupted in applause. Will smiled at Amaya. "You make a fine teacher." She laughed. "We make a fine team." And with that, they packed up, ready to inspire the next generation, one chess move at a time. On a crisp morning, the staff gathered in the grand foyer for an unexpected ceremony. Steam curled from Mariah's coffee cups and Sam's breath showed in the cold air. Will stood on the bottom step of the grand marble staircase, flanked by Amaya and the trustees. At his feet rested an ornate wooden chessboard and the sealed Hawthorne trust papers. Will tapped the chessboard with a cane. "Family, friends, staff, thank you for being here." He cleared his throat, voice strong. "Today, I pass on my legacy." He gestured to Amaya. "Amaya Montgomery, you've proven yourself in mind, heart, and spirit. It's time." He lifted the trust papers. "Amaya, will you accept the role of sole trustee and guardian of our shared future?" The crisp paper crackled. Amaya stepped forward, heart pounding. She met Will's gaze, gratitude and determination shining in her eyes. "I will," she replied, voice clear. Will handed her the trust documents. Then he beckoned her to the chessboard. "Place the king where you will." Amaya moved the ivory king piece 2 squares forward, symbolizing progress. The staff and trustees watched in hushed awe. Will smiled, pride and relief mingling on his face. "Let it be known," he proclaimed. "The Hawthorne Trust and Montgomery legacy now rest in her hands." He patted his floppy chess knight figurine. "May your moves be wise and just." Amaya bowed her head respectfully, then raised her gaze. She addressed the assembled crowd. "I'm honored and humbled. I promise to uphold justice, share prosperity, and honor every person here who helped me rise." The staff cheered, voices ringing clear. Maria wiped tears. Sam pumped a fist, and chauffeurs to gardeners erupted in applause. Will stepped aside, his work done. Amaya picked up the sealed papers and walked up the staircase, each step echoing her new role. At the top, she paused and looked back at her mentor, her grandfather, and gave him a grateful nod. As she turned and disappeared down the corridor, the staff huddled together, chatter buzzing with hope. A new chapter had begun, one where leadership flowed from merit, kindness ruled over entitlement, and everyone, no matter how invisible, had a chance to shine. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows of the estate's conference hall, illuminating rows of plush chairs. Staff members filed in, chauffeurs in crisp uniforms, housekeepers in neat blouses, gardeners in work boots cleaned off for the occasion. At the front, Amaya Montgomery stood behind a simple wooden podium, a row of trustees beside her. Today was the first official shareholder meeting for both the Hawthorne Trust and the Montgomery Labs venture, and nerves buzzed through the room like electricity. "Good morning," Amaya began, voice steady and warm. She smiled at Maria, who waved back with a teary grin. "Thank you all for coming. Today, you're not just staff, you're shareholders and partners." She gestured to a screen showing the agenda. Financial overview, board elections, and open floor for suggestions. A soft murmur of excitement rose. First, Charles Montgomery presented the combined ventures year-to-date earnings. Numbers scrolled up. Modest profits, positive cash flow, and projected growth. The staff leaned forward, eyes bright. Sam nudged Maria. "We're really in this," he whispered. She nodded, hands clasped. Next, Amaya outlined the shareholder voting proc. "Our voices matter." Flashes of disbelief crossed some faces, then determination. They were ready to speak up at last. As votes were cast, the floor opened for ideas. A chauffeur named Andre suggested a community garden expansion on the estate grounds. A housekeeper, Joyce, proposed a staff wellness fund. Gardeners recommended rainwater harvesting to cut costs and boost sustainability. Amaya nodded at each, jotting notes. "Excellent ideas," she said. "We'll include them in next quarter's plan." When ballots were tallied, Amaya announced the new staff-elected board members, Maria, Andre, and Sam, joined by trusty supporters. Applause echoed. The room felt lighter, charged with possibility. People who once served in silence now had power and purpose. Amaya closed the meeting. "This is just the start," she said, eyes shining. "Together, we'll shape this venture and this estate into something truly fair and thriving." As everyone rose, staff members exchanged hugs and high fives. The mansion's old hierarchy had cracked, replaced by a community unified in vision. Down the hallway, Amaya paused at a polished plaque now engraved with staff names and titles. She traced her finger over her own name, feeling a swell of pride. From invisible cleaner to visionary leader, she'd guided them into a new era, one vote, one voice at a time. The next morning's papers hit the newsstands with bold headlines, Made Turned Magnate Grace's Forbes cover and Eco-Diamond Visionary breaks the mold. In the mansion's library, Amaya sat with Naomi and Will, coffee cups warming their hands. A stack of magazines lay on the table, Forbes, Wired, Fortune, all featuring her portrait, propped against the chessboard. Naomi adjusted her scarf. "Looks like they can't get enough of you." She smiled, pride lighting her eyes. Amaya laughed softly. "I never thought I'd see my own face on a magazine cover." She traced the edge of the glossy page. Her title read, From Mop to Market Disruptor. The story of Amaya Montgomery. Will leaned back. "They nailed it. They even quoted your line about making everyone shareholders." He picked up a copy of Wired. "This one calls you the change agent of old money estates." Amaya snorted. "Change agent, I like that." Naomi flipped through Forbes. "They ran your Eco-Diamond patent diagrams across 2 pages. She tapped a chart, projected revenue and social impact side by side. Amaya nodded. "That was my point, profit and purpose can live together." Each article dug into her backstory, the star-shaped scar, the signet ring, the years as Zora Ellis. They highlighted her chess sessions with Will, her scholarship fund launch, and the staff equity model. Amaya felt a mix of embarrassment and gratitude. Her private struggle for identity had become headline news. A flash of tears crossed Maria's face as she entered, holding a copy of Fortune. "Miss Amaya," she said softly, "your story, it's changing lives." She hugged Amaya, startling Naomi. Maria pulled back, eyes shining. "I showed this to my cousin. She's applying for the scholarship." Amaya embraced Maria in return. "That means everything," she said. "It's why I do this." Outside, gardening and maintenance crews paused to read headlines on their phones. Chauffeurs shared articles in the break room. Laughter and chatter filled the air as everyone celebrated. The world was learning what the mansion's walls had only whispered. Later, Amaya penned a thank you note for her editor, promising more insights in next month's follow-up. She set the pen down, breathing deeply. The journey from invisible made to cover story icon felt surreal. But she knew the real work lay ahead, living up to those headlines, proving every day that justice, innovation, and shared prosperity weren't just buzzwords but a roadmap for change. Evening light painted the sweeping hawthorn staircase in gold as staff members gathered with cloth and polish. The rails, once unnoticed, now gleamed beneath their careful hands. Chauffeurs knelt, gardeners stood on stools, and housekeepers wiped each banister rod, an act of care symbolizing their shared success. Amaya stood at the top of the stairs, watching. Naomi joined her, arms crossed, a proud smile on her face. "Look at them," Naomi said softly. "They're polishing more than rails, they're shining a new legacy." Amaya nodded. "This house isn't just history. It's our future." She descended, greeting staff one by one. "Thank you," she said to Maria, who beamed. "For everything." She hugged Sam, who dusted her shoulder. Each gesture felt part of a living tapestry, everyone contributing, everyone valued. At the bottom, Will awaited, leaning on his cane. He tapped the rail and smiled. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he asked. Amaya ran a hand along the smooth wood. "Perfect." The staff stepped back as Amaya and Will joined Charles and Naomi. Together, they admired the staircase. Once a symbol of privilege, now polished by many hands, shining as one. Cameras recorded the moment for the company's live stream and social channels. Amaya turned to the staff. "This is what we built together," she said. "Each rail, each polish, each voice, it all matters." She raised her hand. "Let's finish strong." They resumed their work, laughter and friendly chatter echoing in the hall. As polish removed smudges and fingerprints, it revealed the staircase's true beauty, just as equity and shared purpose revealed the estate's true strength. Amaya stepped back, heartful. 12 years ago, she'd been lost and unseen. Now, she stood at the heart of a home transformed by justice and innovation. "Hey everyone," she called out, smiling wide. Drop your comments, perspectives, and lessons learned in the comments section below. Like the video and subscribe for more. The staff's cheers answered her call, bright and sincere. In that echo, Amaya saw the promise of a future where no one would ever be invisible again, and where shining rails led to even brighter tomorrows.